Good evening and welcome. This is News First, where the people come first. I'm Azra Hassan with our sign language interpreter for tonight, Randy Cruz. Let's first take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Prime Minister must resign to make way for an all-party government. Buddhist monks sign declaration. Protesters march from Independence Square to Golfizz, demanding government's resignation. 1 month since Mirihana protests, demanding resignation of the president. Cost of medicines go up by 40% amidst queues for gas and kerosene. India seizes assets of Chinese telecom firm.
Protests at Golfizz opposite the President's office in Colombo entered its 22nd day today. Senator Naika now brings us the latest from the location. Senator?
I am opposite the President's office, where the people's struggle that has been happening for more than 20 days is happening today as well. Now, today, many professionals from many industries arrived here, and apart from that, university students came here, and parents. I saw a lot of parents with their children here protesting, expressing their dissent towards the government.
Protests opposite the President's office at Golfizz began after the national anthem was sung this morning. People from many parts of Sri Lanka had flocked to Golfizz to attend the demonstrations. Students of the Rajarata University, Jaffna University and Open University in Nabala were among those present. Some athletes marched from Kalutara to join the protests at Golfizz. The message of this struggle is that the administration must be changed. We don't want them to be shuffled around. Academics from leading schools were among those who added their voice to the demonstrations. Some artists marched from Independence Square in Colombo to the Gota Gogama protest site.
As a nation, we have been suffering for decades because of bad management. They are hoping for the best, and we need change.
We have come here as artists to raise our voice against this corruption. We don't have food, we don't have medicine, also the basic needs. I hope that they will hear our voices very soon.
A group of professionals marched from Green Path to join the demonstrations.
The regime of these corrupt Rajpaksas have to go. They think it's their own country, it's their own asset, that they use everything, whatever they want. We want them to get out of this country.
Krishan Ratnaika, who returned to Sri Lanka from Russia after 25 years, was among those who marched to the protest site from Kottaba. It's been a month since the protests at Mirihana. Then we chanted Gota Go Home. We asked the government to resign, but that has not happened. The younger generation has been protesting here for 22 days, but they are resorting to the same tricks in Parliament by not listening to our demands. They have made a mockery out of our sweat and grievances. We are asking these corrupt politicians to resign before the 6th. Otherwise, we will launch a hartal in Sri Lanka.
Us being the youth in the country, we don't have a future here. None of the younger generations have a solid future here. So we have no option but to come here. I feel that Gota should go home and Mahindraj, Paksa and the whole family should go home. There shouldn't be any family politics here in this country. The youth should step in. There is so much leadership in the youth that can come out and then that can fix the country. People who actually love the country rather than stealing from it.
Volunteers were seen distributing food and drinks to the protesters at Golfizz.
It's us. It's all about us. So we pocket out money and we bring our all the resources here.
And we feel that what we are doing is not enough for the country. And the boys are doing their level best. And we feel this is not enough. If we can do much better things for them, definitely we will be pocketing out our money and we are supporting them as adults.
Sri Lanka's youth are on the streets demanding elected lawmakers to find solutions to the country's problems. Now, it's been 40 years since the parliament was relocated to its present building at Sri Javardhanapura. The construction of the new parliament, based on the architectural design of Geoffrey Bawa, began in 1979. Now, this was on a 16-acre land due to the lack of spaces in the building at Golfizz. The new parliament was ceremonially declared open on the 29th of April 1982. And today, Sri Lanka's younger generation is protesting in the old parliament building at Golfizz. They are demanding to resolve the problems that have gone unresolved in the new complex.
Throughout history, people have stood against tyranny and oppression through revolutions that are often violent and bloody. But in Sri Lanka, people of all walks of life have been protesting in revolutionary and non-violent ways, and it's caught the world's attention. The demonstrations at Golfizz, opposite the President's office in Colombo, have been running for almost a month. These are not ordinary protests. The demonstration site has fast become a platform for people to voice their grievances powerfully through a blend of art and creativity. For the first time in history, a township, Gota Go Gama, has been created by the people to mark their protest. It's been a month today since the protest in Mirihana. What's happened in the past 30 days? On March 31st, ordinary citizens rallied outside the president's residence in Mirihana, calling for the government's resignation. Many were arrested. The following day, on April 1st, lawyers turned up in numbers to represent the suspects free of charge. In a gesture of solidarity, the protesters of Mirihana were even applauded by lawyers as they were freed on bail. On the 2nd of April, a curfew was declared, banning travel across the country. But it only rubbed salt on the wounds of the people who continued to take the streets. Access to social media was blocked on the 3rd of April, only to be reversed in less than 12 hours. With public outrage growing, Sri Lanka's cabinet of ministers and central bank governor Ajit Nivad Khabral were forced to step down. The finance minister at the time, Basil Paksa, also resigned. The growing protests had a ripple effect in parliament. 14 lawmakers from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party announced they would leave the government, but the people continued protests as talks of an interim government began emerging within political circles. Demonstrations were held opposite the residences of lawmakers, while parliamentary sessions were held amidst tight security. The tipping point was on the 9th of April, when protests began opposite the president's office at Golfizz, in the heart of Colombo. Amidst heavy downpours and the scorching heat, the protesters chanted their message loud and clear. They wanted change and accountability. Prime Minister Mahindraj Paksa then addressed the nation on April 11th. But protests at Gotagogama, the satirically named protest site, continued. Protesters began camping at Golfizz and even celebrated the Sinhala and Tamil New Year. In solidarity, protest sites were set up in many areas, dubbed as Gotagogama branches. The peaceful but powerful protests at Golfizz then captured the attention of the international community. While this was ongoing, people of Rambukkana took to the streets on April 20th to oppose an overnight fuel price hike. Police opened fire at the protesters, killing 1 and injuring 13. On April 24th, university students gathered outside the Prime Minister's official residence at Vijayarama Mawatha in Colombo. Two days later, a protest site was set up opposite temple trees, this time dubbed as Mainagogama. On April 28th, Sri Lanka witnessed one of the biggest strike actions in the country, involving more than 1,000 trade unions from all sectors. Amidst the tension, a senior superintendent of police and 3 police constables were arrested over the shooting in Rambukkana. On April 29th, leaders of both government and government-affiliated independent parties met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to discuss the demands of the people. The recent protests have borne testament to one fact. In just a month, the people of Sri Lanka have been able to influence changes in a way that no political party or international organization has ever done. A testament to the fact that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. Politicians from all sides say that this struggle has no leader. Well, be that as it may, the question remains, hasn't this people's movement achieved more in just than a month than political parties and their leaders have in 74 years? Demonstrations at the Mainagogama protest site opposite temple trees, the Prime Minister's official residence, demanding the government's resignation, continued for the 6th day today. Buses that were parked on the pavement opposite temple trees a few days ago were seen today as well. The fast unto death launched by a protester against the move entered its 4th day. The protester refused to be moved to a hospital on a 1990 Swiss area ambulance this morning. Workers from the International Committee of the Red Cross stepped in to provide saline to the protester. Our correspondent reported that 2 more protesters began fasting at the protest site today. Tensions flared between the police and the protesters when they tried to set up a tent. Wouldn't you be able to remove those buses? Those in temple trees can't step out without air conditioning facilities. We are suffering under this heat for the people. These vehicles have been brought by the police to protect one person and one family. The big issue is the loudspeakers here. Don't try to commit acts of mockery. We ask Mahindraj to come out through these gates. Otherwise, we will enter it forcefully.
Protests were held in many areas of Sri Lanka in solidarity with the protest at Golfizz. One protest was held at Kirimatiyana, Vennappur this morning.
The people can't handle this pressure. This is how they are responding to it. Instead of providing relief, they are continuing to increase the prices of goods and further pressurizing them. The leader must listen to the people and work towards fulfilling their requirements. Let's unite together to create a new political culture.
Another protest was held in Variapola demanding the president's and government's resignation.
They keep shuffling the cabinet. They are planning to appoint an interim government. They are making a fool out of us. These are not solutions to our issues. The solution is for Gotabaya to go home.
Sri Lankans overseas are continuing to protest against the current Sri Lankan government, and the issue is faced by the people. One protest was held in Ireland.
People in our country are suffering. The government should resign. That is what people from all around the world are protesting for. That is why we are protesting.
People are continuing to face the brunt of a shortage of cooking gas in the country. Long queues were seen in many areas today as well.
People have been waiting for 3 days along the old Chilau road in Negombo to purchase gas.
ඊට මගේ අවුරුදු 65 මගේ උපන්දිනේ පාන්දර 3ට මම මෙතනට ආපු එක තවත් මෙතන මගේ ජීවිතේට මේ වාගේ මේ කට්ටක් කෑවේ දෙනුයි ගෝටා හෝම්
මම විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ශිෂ්‍යාවක්. අපි දැන් දවස් 3ක් තිස්සේ මේ පොලිමේ ඉන්නවා. එක්කෝ එක තීරණයක් කියන්න ඕනේ දෙනවද නැද්ද කියලාවත් මේ මිනිස්සු වයසක මිනිස්සු මම හරි කමන්නේ තරුණයි. මේ වයසක මිනිස්සු මේ පොලිමේ ඉන්නවා. දැන් මම ඉගෙන ගන්නද පොලිමේ ඉන්නේ.
People continue to remain in queues to purchase gas cylinders. Tensions arose at a filling station in Bandarawela when an employee had attempted to fill a 200-litre barrel with fuel. People held a protest opposite a filling station in Kandy demanding kerosene. Workers at the Baddegama gas dealership in Gaul visited the litre gas distribution point in Kahava Gaul demanding fuel.
මිල වැඩිවීම නිසා gas පරිභෝජනය පොඩ්ඩක් අඩු වෙලා තිනවා. මේ අවුරුද්දට පස්සේ දවස් 14කට පස්සේ තමයි මෙම ස්ථානට gas ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ.
Health Minister Professor Chanted has published a gazette allowing the prices of 60 medicines to go up by 40%. A 500 milligram paracetamol capsule can now be sold at 4 rupees and 16 cents, and a 375 milligram amoxicillin capsule can now be sold at 83 rupees and 71 cents. To put this into context, a patient who is prescribed 3 amoxicillin capsules daily for 5 days will have to spend 1,245 rupees. The expenditure before the price increase was 630 rupees.
News First with the people.
Buddhist monks signed a declaration today demanding a solution to the crisis in Sri Lanka. The declaration was signed at the Sangha Council meeting at the Independence Square today.
Thousands of Buddhist monks marched from the All Ceylon Buddhist Congress headquarters in Colombo 7 to Independence Square today.
Mahasangha Sammelanaya
We understand that the country has headed in the wrong direction during the last 2.5 years. The government was formed with the support of the monks, but our hopes were dashed to the ground. Through the 20th Amendment, they created a very powerful executive president, abolished commissions, exempted the president and prime minister from any audit, and opened the doors of corruption in the country. Incapable people were appointed to ministries. They vested all state institutions with retired military officers and destroyed them. They allowed their henchmen to line their pockets through the sugar scam. They failed in their actions during the COVID-19 pandemic and allowed it to spread. They removed skilled people from service and replaced them with their close allies. The Rajpaksas control 48% of the state institutions. They deprived the country of fuel, sugar, rice and milk powder and created only queues and left the people to die on the streets. They destroyed foreign ties to an extent where we can't approach them for help. 1 million data entries at the National Medicines Regulatory Authority's database were erased. Today, these scams are not investigated. They introduced an organic fertilizer policy without a proper assessment and destroyed farmers. They made the current situation in the country so bad that we had to ask for milk powder from Tamil Nadu. Isn't this a shameful situation? The country was dragged into this situation as they tried to govern through myths. Therefore, the people took to the streets. They put forward their opinion. The people asked for everyone to go home. But they are being deaf to those demands. People are dying in queues. They don't understand that. We felt that we must add our strength to the people's demands. They didn't listen to the voices of chief prelates. They were deceived. They said they agreed to the proposals. But what is the point if they are not implemented? They committed a farce even yesterday. We have no political affiliation. If this country is destroyed, our ancestors will curse us. Venerable Dr. Omalpe Sobhithero, a chief Sanganayaka of the Sri Lanka Ramana sect, commented on the crisis in the country. Gotabaya Rajapaksa built imaginary castles. We expected those dreams to be fulfilled. Gotabaya Rajapaksa promised to make the country prosperous by eradicating theft and corruption. But these promises have been limited to dreams. During the last 2 years, what they did was to divide power between their family members and friends and loot the country. Today it has reached a point where Gotabaya has to apologize to the nation for the wrong fertilizer policy. He must apologize to the people for all the wrong decisions he made. A struggle was launched at Golfizz. The protests are spreading across the country. Can we remain silent by just delivering sermons? No. That is why the chief prelates made the right decision. When the president took oaths at the Ruanwali Mahasaya, many shed tears of happiness, assuming that justice would be served upon us. Was that promise fulfilled? No. Ultimately, during this crisis, the chief prelates have asked them to give up on their greed for power and to listen to the people. Neither the president nor the prime minister agreed to that. Is the opposition doing its duty properly? No. They must give up on their presidential ambitions. The people want the president to be removed. The chief prelates are not echoing those emotional sentiments. That is similar to standing before a rock and asking it to explode. Adults must understand that there are ways to cause the rock to explode. Therefore, the chief prelates have made a far-sighted call and asked the president to remove the prime minister and the cabinet. Then the parliament can take the necessary action on the president. We wish to tell Gotabaya and Mahinda that all their promises have failed. You have failed. Accept that and the recommendations of the chief prelates. We are asking you to remain committed to rescue the country from this crisis. Otherwise, the Mahasangha hopes to take strong action against them. The declaration signed by Buddhist monks calls on authorities to implement the proposals of the Buddhist chief prelates to address the political crisis and to restore stability in the lives of the people. The declaration calls on the people to reject all politicians who are not acting in a considerate manner towards the people. The declaration was announced by Venerable Professor Olagamwate Chandrasirithero of the Rajarata University. Just as it has been proposed by the chief prelates of the three sects, an interim government must be formed with the involvement of all parties in parliament. The prime minister must resign and make way for that. Otherwise, based on the declaration of the chief prelates, we will reject all politicians.
We will be back after this short commercial break. Stay with News First.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙවෙයිද දැම්මේ හදිස්සියට බාලා පයිප්පයක් දැම්මේ නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටක් මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටක් හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප්පයක්
ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජලනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් රඟම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න
යස ඉසුරු පිරුණු තැනක් නෙමේක ලොකුම සල්ලි තියෙන තැන අපේ සල්ලිත් පරිස්සම් නිසා
ඉහළ ප්‍රතිලාභ සමගින් විශ්වාසනීය තැන්පතුවක්
LB Yasa Isuru, unparalleled rewards for a trusted deposit.
Welcome back to the news. The Private Fuel Bosses Association says it will go on strike tonight. Now, the United Joint Trade Union Federation commented on the matter today.
The Private Fuel Bouncers Association has said it will go on strike from midnight. Their demands are reasonable. They are demanding to increase their transport fares by 60 rupees up to 341 rupees, considering the rising cost of living, spare parts, fuel and tyres.
In a tweet, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara said that bouncers owned by the government and fuel station owners will be used to distribute fuel if the private sector goes on strike. He said rates for hired bouncers have been adjusted 5 times since July last year, with the total increment standing at 84% using a formula agreed by all parties.
The Ceylon Petroleum Storage Terminals Limited has instructed to immediately open registration for new suppliers to transport fuel. It has also instructed to cancel the registration of suppliers who failed to report to duty. In more local news, opposition leader Ajit Premadasa says the next parliamentary session is going to be crucial. He made these remarks during the 5th day of the protest march launched by his party.
We will bring forward a no confidence and impeachment motion against the government and the president. Next week is going to be decisive. Those who sit in their comfy chairs and continue to criticize us are asking where is the no confidence motion. We wish to tell them that we will go to Parliament not just with one no confidence motion but with many of them. The SLPP is now unable to even hold a May Day rally. We are asking you to gather in thousands at Independence Square. Join hands with us.
දසදහස් ගණනින් ලක්ෂ ගණනින් තමුන්නාන්සලා හෙට දින නිදහස් චතුරස්‍රයට යන්න අපිත් එක්ක එකට එකතු වෙන්න.
The Samagi Jana Balavegya resumed its protest march from Yakala today. The protesters reached Padyagoda today and will leave for Colombo tomorrow.
හෙට දිනේදී පාගමන කොළඹට පැමිණෙනු ඇති.
The central bank says inflation in Colombo had reached 29.8% in April.
Inflation in Colombo had gone up by 3.9% in April last year to 29.8% the same month this year. Food inflation stood at 46.6% and non-food inflation at 22%. Journalists questioned the central bank governor on this yesterday.
And when you have this kind of one-off adjustment in petrol and gas oil prices, obviously headline inflation will go up. It's the inflation expectations and the underlying inflation that we can, and the inflation coming out of the demand pressures is the one central bank can manage through interest rate policy. That's what we are doing. But the other issues like one-off increases will gradually will be easing once that impact is over for a period of time. That obviously will take another 2-3 months.
Speaking on Newsfirst Newsline, former Central Bank Deputy Governor Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena says the central bank would have informed the Finance Ministry of the steps it hopes to take due to inflation.
According to the inflation trackers outside Sri Lanka, like Dr. Steve Hankey of the Johns Hopkins University, Sri Lanka's true inflation rate is now about 119% per annum as at the end of March. In terms of the Monetary Law Act, whenever the Monetary Board finds that the inflation rate is more than 15% per annum, it has to submit a very confidential report to the Minister of Finance outlining the measures which the central bank is planning to take, and also outlining the measures which the Minister of Finance will have to take in order to attain the targets of the central bank.
The Finance Ministry says it has requested for a rapid financing instrument or an RFI from the International Monetary Fund.
The Finance Ministry says it has requested for a rapid financing instrument from the International Monetary Fund. Under this instrument, rapid financial assistance is given to countries in need. The request was made by a Sri Lankan delegation led by Finance Minister Ali Sabri in Washington, D.C. recently. The appeal for a rapid financial instrument was made in addition to a request for an extended fund facility from the IMF. The Finance Ministry said an IMF mission will hold talks with Sri Lanka in early May to agree upon a program for Sri Lanka. The World Bank has also said it will provide an emergency response package of $600 million.
The International Monetary Fund is forecasting Sri Lanka's economy to grow by 2.6% in 2022. The forecast is down from 3.6% that was projected in 2021 by the international financial institutions.
Concerns over stolen assets have been raised during protests that were held recently. And today, India seized $725 million from Chinese smartphone company Xiaomi Corporation.
India's Enforcement Directorate had seized $725 million from the local bank accounts of China's Xiaomi Corporation. An investigation had found that the smartphone maker had made illegal remittances to foreign entities by passing them off as royalty payments. The Enforcement Directorate had been investigating the Chinese company's business practices over suspected violations of Indian foreign exchange laws.
And that's the wrap of this edition of Primetime News. But before we leave you tonight, just a quick reminder to stay tuned to News First. Up next is a News First exclusive documentary, The People's Reign, focusing on the people's struggle. For the News First team, I'm Azra San with our sign language interpreter for tonight, Brian De Cruz. Take care and good night.